The Mischief Rule, also known as Hayden's Rule, originated in the Hayden's case in 1584. It is one of the oldest among the rules of interpretation, which comes into play when there is ambiguity in the word of a statute, making it challenging to rely solely on the literal or golden rules. This rule allows courts to delve into the underlying purpose of the legislation to interpret the ambiguity. Lord Coke, in Hayden's case, enlisted 4 questions on which the Mischief Rule is constructed. What was the common law before the enactment of the Act? What was the mischief and defect for which the common law did not provide? What remedy did the Parliament provide to remove the defect? What is the actual reason for the remedy? Courts operate on the assumption that the reason behind Parliament's legislation holds greater significance than the literal words used. They adopt an approach of interpretation seeking to address and rectify the mischief the statute aims to remedy and promote the appropriate solution. When applying the Mischief Rule, courts examine the state of the law before the legislation, identify shortcomings in that legislation, analyze the remedy introduced by the Parliament, and understand the purpose behind that remedy. Smith v. Hughes, Section 11 of the Street Offences Act 1959 limited the act of soliciting customers in a street. The issue at hand was whether prostitutes who sought potential customers from balconies or windows could be considered as soliciting in a street. Given that the purpose of the act was to improve public spaces by preventing people from being solicited by prostitutes while walking along the streets, it was determined using the Mischief Rule that such solicitation from balconies or windows amounted to solicitation in a street, and thus the specific location from which they were soliciting held no significance. Badshah v. Sao Urmila Badshah Godse. The Supreme Court ruled that a provision such as Section 125 of the Criminal Procedure Code addressing maintenance serves the purpose of empowering marginalized segments of society, specifically aiding destitute wives, helpless children or parents, and advancing social justice, equality, and individual dignity. The court held that when handling a case under this section, the court should consider not only the statute's intended objective but also the problem it aims to remedy. Bengal Immunity Co. v. State of Bihar. The court in this case held that prior to the coming into force of the Constitution, there was chaos and confusion in the interstate trade. The multiple taxation by different provinces on the principle of territorial nexus hindered smooth interstate trade and commerce. The court observed that it was to cure this mischief of multiple taxation and to preserve the free flow of interstate trade and commerce in the Union of India. The Constitution makers adopted Article 286 of the Constitution. Pyarelal v. Ramchandra Mahadev. In this case, the accused faced prosecution under the Food Adulteration Act for selling sweetened supari that used an artificial sweetener. The accused argued that supari is not a food item and does not come under the purview of the Food Adulteration Act. However, the Supreme Court rejected the literal interpretation based on dictionary definitions and ruled that supari fell within the category of food under the Act. Thus, the court interpreted the legislation to prevent mischief and advance the intended remedy.